Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new to astrology and you haven't seen my previous video, New to Astrology, where I go over the basics that most people should know when they're getting freshly into astrology, then be sure to check out that video after this one. Also, if you haven't seen my video prior to that, titled Why Astrology, where I go over the reasons that I've started to take astrology seriously and why I'm doing it more and more, then be sure to check out that video as well. I noticed in my last videos that my voice seems to be a little bit quiet, so I'm going to try and project my voice as I go forward with more videos to ensure that my microphone is picking it up properly. So if I go quiet again, no worries. I'm going to continue to try and remind myself to keep projecting and that'll get better as we go. Also, I'm still getting used to speaking directly to a camera. So, I mean, if I seem a little rigid, we'll shake that off as I get more and more used to doing these videos. This is going to be a bit of a longer video and one that I've been more excited to get to because I'd really like to go over all of the transits that have taken place over the last year to get us to this point. My videos up to now have mostly been just explaining what I'm doing here and why I'm interested in astrology right now. But in order to get us to a place where we can start doing these weekly update videos, I need to set a baseline for us to be updating from. So that's what this video is going to be. I'm going to go over the major transits that have taken place over the last year up until now. And this is an extra special year in astrology because for the first time in 288 years, we've had every planet in our solar system transit signs within a 12-month period, so within 1 year. This actually started in November of 2024 and up till now, but so they're not all necessarily in one calendar year, but they have all taken place within a 12-month period. And the first time, or the last time, sorry, that happened was in 1737. So again, 288 years ago. So like I said, I'm still getting comfortable talking directly to a camera, but as we go, I'm going to loosen up. And I've got my notes here to keep me in line with all of this, but I do know this stuff very well. And as I loosen up, I'm looking forward to be able to just talk off the top of my head about each of these things rather than having to refer back to my notes. But there's a lot of stuff here, so I'm just going to be bouncing back and forth a little bit. Now, like I said, every planet in the solar system has transit this year. So because there's so much here, I'm actually going to be skipping over a few of them. We're going to skip the sun, the moon, Mercury, and Venus because they all transit within a month. So that's a lot to be going over. Considering that we have the major planets all transiting this year, we have a lot to go over just with them alone. And the other more personal ones will come up pretty much every single week anyways. So that being said, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, and let's get into it. So I'm actually going to start from the back end with Pluto because Pluto holds an extra special place here for me because actually this entire astrological journey and this getting on YouTube and talking about this and taking astrology as seriously as I am right now all started last year with the transit of Pluto from Capricorn into Aquarius. So as I described in my previous video, I had said that I've been interested in astrology for a number of years, but once AI came along and I started to put AI to astrology, I really started to learn a lot of things that I never would have got otherwise. And on November 19th, 2024, I remember going to bed the night before thinking, okay, Pluto's transiting Capricorn into Aquarius. This is going to bring themes of innovation, rebellion, and overall transformation of society. But what does that really mean? And I remember saying to myself, like, yeah, everything's going to change, but I'm going to wake up tomorrow and nothing's going to really be any different. And I woke up on November 19th and remember that ChatGPT had released voice mode for the system, and it did change everything. It was exactly the innovative tool that I needed to start moving forward, because it completely transformed the way that I was able to interact with AI, because I I could talk. You know, again, I'm still getting comfortable here in front of a camera, but the moment that I didn't have to sit down and type out all my thoughts anymore, and I could just spew them all to the microphone, was a game changer for me. It allowed me to get so much more out of analyzing astrology and my chart. I was able to interrupt the AI and ask questions as they came up. It's just it was fantastic what an instant shift we had going from Capricorn into Aquarius with Pluto. So this was the catalyst for me taking astrology even more seriously and taking AI even more seriously now that I could talk to it directly, and recognizing the instant shift from Capricorn into Aquarius. And this transit is going to remain, sorry, Pluto is going to remain in Aquarius until March of 2043. So it's going to be there for a significant number of years, and we're going to see a massive shift in society. And with astrology, one of the things we like to do is look back into the past to see how things happened previously in order to interpret how they're likely to take place in the future. So, a couple of things that have happened with Pluto and Aquarius is the American and French revolutions, which, if you overlay that into today's age, we just a couple of years or a couple of weeks ago had France. Their government fell apart from what I saw. I didn't look too much into that, but it lines up perfectly with Pluto and Aquarius and the French Revolution. And I mean, not to mention everything that's going on with the United States right now. So, I mean, Pluto and Aquarius is bringing an entire age of transformation of society and structures, where Capricorn would build up all of these traditional structures and sort of, you know, consolidate power into all of these isolated systems. Aquarius comes to bring power back to the people. And you see this with things like cryptocurrency, or again, AI is another fitting theme of this. So over the next number of years, we're going to see a massive change with Pluto and Aquarius. Then again, just to finish up with Pluto before we move on, because I want to make sure that I hit this point, um, it really brought for me another level of being able to interact with astrology. But not only that, it it helped me come up with probably one of the greatest ideas that I've ever had in my life. And I was able to take astrology to an entirely new level with AI by creating a whole system that I'm going to get into detail with in a future video. And I'm really excited to put that out, because this system that I created is once it gets out there, it's going to be absolutely massive. So I'm really excited to start sharing that. And again, I'm going to have an entire video specifically for that. That being said, right around the same time, we had Mars transiting into Cancer, which for me is my Mars return sign. So I don't think I've explained this up to this point in any of my videos, but in astrology, a return is when you have a planet in a certain sign in your chart. So for me, that would be Mars in Cancer. And then that planet returns to that sign at any given time. So from November and, well, more so December, pretty much all of last winter, Mars was transiting through Cancer, my sign of Cancer, which is Mars as action, and then Cancer is more homebody. And well, particularly for me, I have it in my 6th house. So Cancer expresses itself as my daily routines and sort of the things I'm doing at home. And considering that Pluto and Aquarius had just brought this massive new idea for me that I had started working on. Mars moving into Cancer brought me into hermit mode, where I just got on my computer, I got on my phone on voice mode with ChatGPT, and I just started writing down all my ideas, sharing all of my ideas out loud to ChatGPT, and then that carried me over the entire winter. I started altering the routines that I was having daily in order to fit around this, and it very much fit the theme of Mars and Cancer. Now, one historical event that I think is quite important to note about Mars and Cancer is that not the last time, but when Pearl Harbor was bombed, it happened to be 2 months after Mars had exit Cancer. And then this year, when Mars had transit out of Cancer in April, in about mid-April, 2 months later, in June, was when Ukraine initiated Operation Spiderweb. So we had a Pearl Harbor style bombing where Ukraine sent military drones across to Russia in trucks, and then they bombed one of their air bases. So we had a direct Mars and Cancer, or sorry, I guess that would be more Mars and Leo parallel to back when Pearl Harbor was bombed. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because first I want to touch base with Neptune, because on March 29th, Neptune transit out of Pisces, where it had been for 14 years, into Aries. So moving out of the spiritual, dreamy, delusional sign of Pisces that Neptune had been in for 14 years, and Pisces being its home sign. So this is generally the themes that Neptune brings to any sign that it's going into, but it's particularly at home in Pisces. So it's moved out of Pisces on March 29th, 2025 into Aries, which is the sign of conflict, war, independence, aggression. So with it, you can expect overall, and again, this is one of the back end planets, and it focuses more on overall community themes or societal themes. So what we're all going to experience as a society. So this will bring themes of war. It will bring themes, and that is nation versus nation. That can be civil war, which we've seen, the beginning themes of in certain places. We actually, just a couple of weeks ago, saw Nepal completely topple their government. So that's very Neptune in Aries. We're seeing that all over the place. So between Neptune in Aries, the sign of war and conflict, along with Pluto in Aquarius, which is bringing revolution and innovation, we're having a massive global shift here. Just that conveniently brings us back to Mars transiting into Leo, because Mars transit into Leo shortly after on April 18th. So that would just be a few weeks later after Neptune transit into Aries. So we have Mars in Leo. Three days later, Pope Francis died. And I remember this specifically because it was on my birthday. And then isn't it convenient that we just so happen to, a few weeks later, while Mars is still in Leo, we get the new Pope named Pope Leo. So that's a little convenient, I think. And then shortly after, we had Operation Rising Lion, where Israel attacked Iran with a bunch of missiles. And there's an important thing to note here, is that Donald Trump is actually a Leo rising and has his Mars in Leo, which Mars action, but also it means that this would be his Mars return sign. So all of this stuff was happening while Mars was in Leo. And then once Mars had transit out of Leo into Virgo, things kind of toned down, and we got a few precision strikes. There was no more just rapid fire bombing. It was kind of just I believe this is when they took out the nuclear facilities, but it was just kind of in and out, one and done, clean it up, Virgo, right? Now in May, we have a similar transit to what we got with Neptune in March, transiting out of Pisces into Aries, because we have Saturn transiting out of Pisces into Aries on May 24th. So we're going from a Pisces conjunction of Neptune and Saturn over the last 2.5, almost 3 years, to now they're both transiting into Aries for another conjunction for the next 3 years, because Saturn will remain there for about 3 years. And then Neptune will remain there for significantly longer than that. I forget exactly how long Neptune's staying there, but it's going to be more than 14 years this time, I believe, if I'm correct. But Saturn moving into Aries is significant because Aries is a fire sign and it's the first fire sign in the zodiac. And around this time is exactly when Canada started to experience all of the rapid wildfires. And I live in Canada, so this is something that I was keeping track on quite a bit. But yeah, Aries fire with Neptune and Saturn. And then this is something that took place all summer. So Saturn's entire transit into Aries for the summer, which only lasted for the summer because Saturn had retrograde in the middle of July, which means it started to basically start moving backwards from our perspective. And then as of September 1st, Saturn had returned back into Pisces, where it's no longer in conjunction with Neptune, but it will be once it comes out of retrograde and goes back into Aries on February 14th, 2026, so Valentine's Day, where it then will remain in Aries for the next 2.5 years. So this summer that we got with Saturn in Aries was sort of a preview to what we're going to be experiencing for the next 2 years once Saturn moves back in February. And it's important to note that there were quite a lot of protests this summer. So with Saturn in Aries and Neptune in Aries, and again with Pluto in Aquarius, it's just very fitting for the time that we would see a ramp up in the number of protests. But with Saturn having moved out of Aries and back into Pisces for the time being, we should see a little bit of a slowdown with that. It shouldn't come to a complete halt because we still have Pluto and Neptune where they are, but Saturn has taken a break for now and moved back into its dreamy Pisces. That brings us to Jupiter next, which I don't really have any notes written down for that because I haven't been keeping too many tabs on Jupiter as we've been going. I've really been interested in the ones we've talked about already and a couple others. So Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto, because there's been so much going on. But Jupiter being the planet of growth and opportunity and expansion, I mean, it's always working on growth in the background, right? So I think we're kind of going to skip over Jupiter. We got a lot going on with all of the other ones here, but it's no less important. It just, I haven't been keeping too many tabs on it, so I don't want to give you information on something that I haven't really been keeping too much track of. Everything else here has really kept me busy personally. Next, that brings us to Uranus. And unlike Jupiter, I actually do have a lot of notes for Uranus because there's a lot going on. I tend to pay a lot of attention to Uranus and Saturn myself. My rising sign is Aquarius. So being what it is, that means that Uranus is the modern ruler for me, and Saturn is the traditional ruler. So I tend to keep close tabs on the two of them mostly, especially considering that they just transit signs within the same 2 months of each other. So Uranus actually transit on July 7th of 2025, where it had transit out of Taurus and into Gemini. So this is really interesting because Gemini should be dealing with a lot of themes of communication, and I would say this brings us into technology and AI and that kind of stuff that we've been seeing a lot of going on. And I find this particularly interesting because Uranus in Gemini is the Uranus return of the atomic bomb and also of World War II, which is interesting for the United States, and we'll get to that. But it's the return of the atomic bomb and also of LSD. So, which some would argue on because LSD was actually synthesized while Uranus was in the sign of Taurus, but it wasn't actually used or dropped for the first time until Uranus had transited into Gemini. So we have two 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 bombs going off here in the sign of Uranus and Gemini. And funny that it's two because it's Gemini dealing with the twins. Two, right? So we have the physical bomb, which literally split the atom and released an immense amount of energy. But then we also have the mental or the psychological bomb, which was LSD, which set off the entire hippie wave, right? So, being that we have entered into Uranus in Gemini, and we have the Uranus return of LSD and the atomic bomb. That excites me because the way I see it, I think that this is going to repeat itself in the form of artificial intelligence. So I think the bomb that gets dropped in this era is both technological and mental in a way where you could almost think cyborgs, right? Like a merging of technology and humanity, sort of bringing the two together. So that's my sort of prediction for Uranus in Gemini, which really excites me. But maybe I could be wrong. Write your thoughts in the comments because maybe some of you are thinking something else. But yeah, Uranus in Gemini is going to be a particularly interesting transit, and it's going to remain there for the next 8 years, if I'm correct. Now, I'd mentioned that this is the Uranus return of World War II, so this is significant for the United States. But another thing that's significant to note here is that it's actually the Uranus return of Donald Trump. So we're having a few of Trump's returns going on here. We have had his Mars in Leo just a couple months ago, and then now we're having his Uranus return, which most people don't even live to see their Uranus return. It takes about 80 years for Uranus to get back to the sign you were born in. So if you're lucky enough to see it, then, I mean, we'll see what happens. But Uranus is specifically dealing with themes of disruption and shaking things up. So whatever Uranus is doing is going to be exciting whether you like it or not. Now, Uranus also went retrograde shortly after transiting into Gemini, similar to Saturn. So, in the way that we now have Saturn transit back into Pisces, we have Uranus, which is going to retrograde back into Taurus on November 7th, and then remain there for a little while until it comes back into Gemini. So, I mean, we're getting a little bit of flip-flopping between Saturn and Uranus coming into their sign and then going back into the previous one. But I mean, yeah, it's interesting. So the winter this year, we get almost a copied theme from the one prior as it pertains to Saturn and Uranus, but they will be moving back into where they want to be going forward after the winter. Now, having discussed all that, I'm going to move into September because September 2025 is a significantly interesting month as it pertains to the astrology and the world events. Because, well, first of all, we have Mars in Libra. So we have themes of balance and justice and, that kind of thing. But I'm going to kind of move away from that because what I find more interesting is that we've had 2 black moons this month, which, if you don't know, a black moon takes place when there's 2 scenarios that allow for a black moon. The first one being the 4th new moon in a calendar season, which would have been at the beginning of September. We had the first black new moon in Virgo. It would have been the 4th new moon of the summer. And then at the end of the month, we had the second black new moon in Virgo, because this is the other condition for meeting a black moon, is that it is the second new moon in the same sign. So considering that we had two new moons at the first degree of Virgo and at the last degree of Virgo, they both fell in the sign of Virgo. So we had two Virgo new moons, meaning that the second one becomes a black moon. But that's two black moons in the same month. That's the equivalent of having two blue moons in the same month, because a blue moon is basically the same thing except on a full moon rather than a new moon. So what's particularly interesting about this is that in between these two black moons, we had the entire Charlie Kirk assassination going on. And in between the two black new moons in Virgo, we had a full moon lunar eclipse, which was in the sign of Pisces. And this is significant as well, because considering that the moon was in the sign of Pisces and Saturn had just retrograded back into Pisces, we're now having a conjunction of Saturn and the moon on a lunar eclipse. And I think that this is very significant in relating to the Charlie Kirk assassination, because Pisces is the sign representing Jesus. And we all know that Charlie Kirk was a Christian. So it all seems to line up a little too perfectly with the astrology. This lunar eclipse also happened to be a blood moon, by the way. So, I mean, do with that information what you will. But then, conveniently, the funeral service for Charlie Kirk happened to be exactly on the day of that second black new moon in Virgo, which, because we're now 2 weeks after a lunar eclipse, this happened to be on a solar eclipse. So in this eclipse window, or even in this black moon window, we've had significant shift in society, where we've had a traumatic event that everybody witnessed, to wrapping it all up by the end of by the second black new moon. And I just find it all, you know, there's something to it. I'm just not entirely sure what, you know? It all lines up a little too perfectly with the astrology. So, you know, just something to think about. But that pretty much wraps us up here for this video. We've gone over all of the significant major transits that have happened this year in 2025, since, of course, Pluto on November 19th in 2024. But again, the first time in 288 years that we've had every planet in the system transit within a 12-month period. And I think that's pretty special. So, yeah, a good time to be getting into astrology, if any. So again, if you like what you see here and you want to support this channel and see some more videos, then please like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to my channel, and go check out some more of my other videos. Like I said, I had a new to astrology video that I posted recently for beginners who either have, well, I mean, if you've heard of astrology before and are unsure of a few of the basics, then that's a good place to start. And if you would like to get some more information on why I've chosen to do astrology, then I would recommend watching my Why Astrology video. And I really do recommend watching that video if you haven't yet, because I get into a few personal details that really put the nail in the coffin for astrology, in my opinion. So check those out, and stay tuned for my next video coming soon. Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate you being here. Take care.